MAGA is embroiled in yet another civil war, but let me explain why I think this is the most significant schism in MAGA that has happened in the last 10 years. First, take a look at this clip that team compiled here of exactly what's going on, what the contours of this debate over Iran look like.
Just to clarify, Steve, I'm America first all the way. And I don't know anyone that wakes up and thinks about bombing Iran. I honestly don't. I haven't talked to anyone that thinks that's a good idea, or even it doesn't even occur to them because it feels like no threat to their life.
I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire, obviously.
3 bombings to neutralize Iran may turn out to be the 2025 version of 2 weeks to slow the spread. And I'm here to represent the base of the MAGA party that got Trump elected. Most of us were tired of the wars in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and we were promised that we wouldn't be engaging in another one, yet here we see this happening.
But when you start making decisions that are predicated upon the assumption that America is going to come in, not just for defense, but for offense, no, we have to make decisions that put America first.
Okay, so again, I think that represents the most significant schism in MAGA over the last decade in the full existence of MAGA. I'm going to get into why. First, make sure to subscribe. We have a community over at undercurrents.tv where you get a weekly newsletter, you get a private email address, and all kinds of great stuff from Unheard. So make sure to sign up there as well. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. But I think the most important point here is that this is a load-bearing weight of MAGA. Foreign policy, criticisms of foreign intervention are a load-bearing weight for the MAGA worldview. It is not optional, right, to be in for the average voter. I mean, Lindsey Graham can maybe make his argument all day until he's blue in the face, but he's not representative of any Republican voters for the most part. I mean, maybe there's like 2% that see themselves as Lindsey Graham Republicans, but for the average MAGA voter, this is not optional. This opposition to foreign intervention or like hair trigger foreign interventionism is not an optional part of the worldview. This is a load-bearing weight. It is seen as being of a piece with opposition to open borders and financialization, right, of the economy. The hollowing out of America is seen as all stemming from this, and it's the same thing on the culture war stuff, right? By the way, the 1619 Project, the trans hormones for children and pronouns for children and bathrooms and locker rooms and all of that is seen as being part of the same elite project to shove their worldview on the constitutional republic, on a democratic country of people who vote and feel as though, viscerally, their votes and their values are being undermined by people in Washington, D.C., New York, Wall Street. When Josh Hawley was campaigning in Missouri, I remember covering this. He talked all of the time about that trifecta. Washington, Hollywood, Washington, and Wall Street is what he would say on the campaign trail when he first ran for Senate in 2018, I think is when it was. So it's not sort of one of those things that people in MAGA world, as you saw from that compilation, can agree to disagree on. It's not like we'll have our gentleman's handshake and get on with our golf game. This is not that. And so there have been flare-ups in this particular, like if we're thinking of MAGA as, and I mean like core MAGA, as being held up by load-bearing columns. I would say one of those is immigration. One of those is foreign policy, and one is culture. And on the foreign policy and also the immigration front, it's economy, like those things you see. There's a cultural element of immigration, but also a cultural element of the economy. And you see how these things are all kind of in harmony with one another. And the sort of driving impetus of it is opposition to the elite worldview. And that's where I think the Iran question is different than anything else we've seen. So we've seen Donald Trump authorize strikes in Syria in ways that it didn't fly particularly well with anti-interventionists in the MAGA coalition. What was that, 2017? Donald Trump was arming Ukraine during his first term in office in ways that made the Lindsey Grahams of the world very supportive and very happy. There have been flare-ups, right? There's the flare-up over the H-1B visas that first sent Elon Musk and Steve Bannon reeling and fighting with one another. That was significant. I think that rift was never healed. That was a wound that was never healed by the time Elon Musk was out the door, because it was always inevitable that they would end up fighting about those things when policy decisions actually had to be made. After the campaign was over, the presidency was won, they actually had to start deciding what would happen in the administration. And so that clash was inevitable, and it was probably more intense than it had to be. But that is something, even so, it's more narrow. That's it's a significant policy question, no doubt about it, but it is an agree to disagree type of thing. In fact, they did agree to disagree for many months on it, and we're sort of tussling behind the scenes. But if Donald Trump decides to authorize a strike in Iran, and again, as of this recording, that hasn't yet happened. Maybe by the time it airs, it will have happened, or it will have been ruled out. But the point will still remain, either way, that what happens to MAGA going forward is dependent heavily on that decision, because the MAGA worldview is predicated on an opposition to wars that are themselves predicated on people in positions of power telling you to trust the intelligence, asking for your trust in them, and then saying that, it doesn't have to turn into a quagmire, right? You're told that thing, you're told that point time and time and again, if you have been told that, if you're an American. And also, in a war where you're told there will not be a need for boots on the ground, that it'll be easy, that the regime will collapse, and that Americans will be greeted as liberators by a grateful Middle Eastern, predominantly Muslim people who will welcome this Western this Western country that is helping, by the way, Israel, which is not supported by the majority of Iranians. So you can understand how, for your average MAGA voter, I want to be clear, there's a difference between the MAGA voter and the professional MAGA space. So I would include in that pundits, people like Tucker Carlson, people like Candace Owens, people who are in the sort of online influencer space who have been opposed to the Lindsey Graham position on this. There's a difference between them and the average MAGA voter, to be sure. I think the average MAGA voter is also very, and Trump has an instinct for this, but very interested in American strength. The average MAGA voter does not want the United States of America to be embarrassed, to look weak. And I think Trump understands that and appreciates it in a way that's kind of different from his most anti-interventionist critics. I think they're out of touch to some degree with the average MAGA voter. Some of them know that, some of them don't. But it's just not representative, and that's fine. But this is, so to be clear, there's a difference between when we're talking about Tucker Carlson and when we're talking about Joe MAGA. I think Joe MAGA doesn't have any problem at all with Trump talking tough about Denmark and Greenland, or the Panama Canal, or even negotiating, playing hardball with Putin and not letting Putin walk all over him, whatever it is. Same goes for Zelensky. They want to see America looking strong and powerful, and so that's important too. At the same time, and this is admittedly a tightrope that you have to walk, they don't want to see American boots on the ground, and they're very, very wary of promises about good intelligence, quick collapse, pretty easy victories that don't turn into quagmires, and no boots on the ground. Those things are all happening right now, and you'd be foolish to not compare the playbook that we saw in 2002, 2003, and then repeatedly in Afghanistan, or you could look at Libya, and the eventual growth of ISIS, the spread of ISIS. I mean, people are obviously very tired of this, and it's not just in the same way people are maybe tired of the H-1B visa being exploited. It's people are tired of this in a way that made them want to vote for Donald Trump to begin with, period. It was one of the ways that Donald Trump built trust with voters, Republican voters, despite being a Democrat when he ran in 2015 and 2016. We have seen this for a decade now. This is a significant reason that Donald Trump earned the trust of Republican voters. And again, we've talked about those load-bearing planks. I think there are about 3 of them that are absolutely critical and essential. So it's not that this is the only one, but if this goes away, the coalition does collapse. It will never be the same. It doesn't mean that there is no more MAGA. It just means that MAGA is basically split probably in 2. It might be more like 60-40. And I don't know that every average MAGA voter goes over to the Tucker Carlson side. I think there'll still be some people who are ambivalent and don't know what to think because you're being told to trust, but to just have trust by someone who you have trusted for a decade. And you trust Donald Trump because he told you correctly that you couldn't trust anybody else. And so it becomes a real trust crisis for MAGA. I don't think it will ever be the same. By the way, he said that he would end conflict in Ukraine in 24 hours. He made a big deal about getting that early ceasefire deal via Steve Witkoff before his inauguration, seemingly in this Reagan-esque hostage-freeing maneuver, and still that conflict is ongoing. It has flared back up, and there's really no end in sight at all in Ukraine, and he's approaching the 6-month mark of his presidency. So all of this is playing out against the backdrop of that, but I don't think there's a world in which once you betray the values that Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and those guys, Theo Vaughn, for example, have said is a big part of why they trusted you, why they liked you. And that goes for a lot of their audiences. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think once you betray a central value, and that's not my argument. I'm saying that's the Tucker Carlson argument here as we try to analyze what happens in the future. I don't think there's any world in which he can be persuaded or Candace Owens can be persuaded that this increased entanglement in Iran is quote unquote America first. And again, the definition of America first is nebulous. It's what Trump says it is historically. It can be classified as interventionist or anti-interventionist at any given stage of the way. Donald Trump hired John Bolton, but Donald Trump actually also went and negotiated with Putin, went to North Korea, said flattering things about Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin in order to negotiate with them. So he's not categorized as black and white very easily. My point is that this puts him firmly in a black or white category for Tucker Carlson, for Candace Owens, for those people, for Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I don't see there being a world where he's able to persuade them away from that because they've made it a central premise of their worldviews that, by the way, they're talking about all the time, every single day. And it's a central premise of the worldviews that Trump actually kind of conditioned and taught a lot of voters to see the world differently and have this new perspective after the post 9/11 quagmires, to borrow that word, were just exasperating and disappointing and tragic to a lot of Americans. Donald Trump was rhetorically a leader in the space of a lot of people on the right, and Tucker has talked about this, looking at things differently. So it's almost like he gave people permission to reconsider the hubristic nature of neoconservatism. And because of that, it's become a load-bearing plank in the MAGA worldview. So I just don't think there's any coming back for this with a significant portion of the MAGA coalition. I just don't think there's any way around it. So wanted to make that point. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, undercurrents.tv is where you get longer versions of our great interviews with some of the most interesting thinkers that you could possibly talk to in some of the most timely moments when we're all looking for answers and information. Undercurrents.tv, all kinds of good stuff over there. Join the community. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back soon with more.